A Nascent Kaleidoscope. Chapter 31. I took one more look around the college. My time here was short, but I enjoyed it. The casualness of the institute dedicated to magical knowledge. I compared it once to the clock tower, just more whimsical. Perhaps I exaggerated a bit. The clock tower was much more cutthroat. Death and worse were a real possibility every day that one studied. No lords here that hoarded everything substantial. New blood was welcomed and even desired. I could understand the differences between needs that each world had, but I couldn't help but admire this place more. Oh, and I was not looking forward to the overt racism at the clock tower. Something told me I would need to quite thoroughly establish the pecking order once I return home. Archmage, I wish to speak, I said, walking the courtyard idly. I could feel the magics take hold of me, and I didn't resist as I was teleported. Wilhelm, the Archmage greeted, as my vision opened up to his quarters. To what do I owe the pleasure? I suppose there are a few things I wanted to speak to you about. I flicked my hand, retrieving the staff from my ring. I got this thing. I assume this is what you were speaking about. Marvelous. He admired. I could see his magica pulsate every so slightly, truly taking in the sight of the staff. The staff of Magnus, just as powerful as I remember it. He sighed, moving his hands as various objects, books, and materials began to sort themselves around the room. I assume that you found out the truth then. I tilted my head in confusion. Pardon. You don't have to spare me your thoughts. I'm well aware of my own sins. He casually waved me off, but I still confused. I really have no idea what you're talking about. He seemed to understand that we were on different wavelengths. You traveled through Labyrinthian, did you not? Kinda. I gave a sheepish look. He let out a long sigh. What exactly happened when you went there? Fought a skeleton dragon, some undead mage started talking to me, tried to drain my magica, so I cut off his hand and took the staff while he was trapped in a stasis spell powered by a couple ghosts. He just stood there for a moment and blinked before erupting in laughter. I see. Truly you do not do things as one predicts. He wiped a tear from his eye. Those ghosts were my old colleagues, my schoolmates back when I was a novice mage. You ventured into those ruins when you were a novice. I mean, I cleared it easily, but as a novice, well, that was a death wish for him. I was young, foolish, and arrogant beyond measure. The same as all those who went with me. We all thought unlimited power awaited us there, and we started to lose member after member. He looked distant, reminiscing of the past. I was a different person back then. I was willing to do nearly anything for more power, more knowledge. The school was the same. It wasn't uncommon for another student to turn up dead in the morning, and no one bothered to do anything past a minor investigation. He shook his head. Why did you get the staff all this time, then? Surely you are powerful enough now. I didn't know how strong the undead mage was, but the Archmage was definitely a powerhouse. With time and preparation, I don't think he would lose out. Those two ghosts, they were the other two survivors that reached the end. What awaited us was that undead mage, as you called it. He pursed his lips. A dragon priest, a terrifyingly powerful mage who existed in the era where dragons ruled the world. To add on to that, he possessed the staff of Magnus. Those ghosts, your former schoolmates, they didn't willingly stay back, did they? I eyed him. They did not. He didn't even deny the accusation. As I said before, it is both my sin and my regret. I won't bore you with my life story. It was after that incident that I vowed to be better. I studied, I gathered power and knowledge, but no more did I lust after some unattainable concept as unlimited power or such other nonsense. I did it all with a purpose. I became Archmage and forced the college to change with me. I would not allow any new students to suffer like I had, or those who had been buried in the shallow graves outside these walls. Why tell me anything of this? Why tell me where the staff was? I was rather confused here. When you first came here, I thought you were the same as the me from back then. I saw your potential, and it terrified me. I wanted to make sure you didn't walk the same path as I did. I thought a kind hand reached out would remove any need for malicious thoughts. He gave me a genuine smile. I suppose I was just seeing my old demons in you and got blinded. He shook his head, a small laugh escaping his lips. You were just a young man trying to find his path in the world, one who was extraordinarily talented. So I kept an eye out for when you needed help. I cut off the potential of so many mages, Perhaps I thought it was a way to even out my sins by helping your potential blossom. A multiple of emotions washed over me. I felt bad for suspecting him. Thank you, I said quietly. He put a hand on my shoulder. I said it before. You are a member of his college, and I will always be on your side. His smile changed to something more neutral. Now, what is the true reason you returned? Am I that easy to see through? I sighed. I wanted to say goodbye. I'll be disappearing for about a month and didn't want anyone to worry. I see. I hope you aren't in any trouble then? Not particularly. I'm going to seek out my grandfather for training. I ran a hand through my hair. I fought a dragon over at Whiterun. I decided to just be blunt about it. The Archmage paused, staring at me intently. Wilhelm, that was an exceedingly stupid thing to do. I know, you don't have to tell me that. I was annoyed, not at him but at myself. I had to though, my friend was in danger. You're still alive. I'm assuming you were successful. I was, but not without cost, and I revealed a few too many of my trump cards. I was made aware that I've drawn a bit of attention I didn't want to. I managed to avoid most questions, but I thought it best to disappear for a bit and get stronger. You are not a child. I don't think I need to chide you too much. I'm sure your lady friend will do that more than enough. He gave me an evil smirk, and I couldn't help but wince. A dragon, first Rift 10 and now Whiterun. I'll need to speak with the Jarl of Winterhold and prep the college for potential combat. He didn't look too thrilled. My friend I mentioned. Apparently he is a dragonborn. I didn't think the Archmage would abuse this knowledge. His eyes widened. Truly! He looked rather excited as well. This changes matters. He stroked his beard intently. I will need to get in contact with Whiterun then. Yes, it makes sense now. I heard the call from the Greybeards. No doubt he is up there training now. The Dragonborn was supposed to be a natural at magic. I'll send him some books to get him started. Well, I guess I don't need to explain anything about that topic then. I would suggest ramping up production of potions and get ready for large-scale battles on the horizon. The casualties were high, and the dragon didn't even attack the city, just a watchtower. Indeed, you raise a good point. We have large stocks of supplies for emergencies just like this. He nodded to himself. Not to mention I have that wheel of cheese that just keeps repopulating from Sheogorath. I can probably use that to supply a good amount of food to help out during attacks. Thoram is a nice guy, perhaps a bit naive. Also, he tends to learn better by experience. He also said he was having trouble with the Restoration branch. I gave a small smile. The Archmage looked at me, his gaze softening. I'll make sure your friend is taken care of. Since a Dragonborn had popped up with the return of the dragons. That old prophecy might be in full swing. No, it must be. I'll get in touch with all my contacts. We can pull our resources and weather the storm together. He reached out, grabbing a hold of my hand, the one with my ring on it. He did something that caught me by surprise. A going-away present. He smirked. My mouth opened slightly, utterly surprised at the ease in which he accessed my storage ring and filled it with all manner of supplies and resources. I don't know what to say. When had I ever had someone so nice to me other than my mother? How about you tell me you won't die before you get back? I don't think my grandfather would risk my life. I was speaking of Meridia. Oh, right. Well, I guess I'll need all the luck there. Thank you again. I have a goddess to appease. I would say, may the divine bless you, but I doubt even they want to get involved here. Yeah, that's fair. I had cut open a portal, pathing my way through dimensions until I found myself in a strange place. I knew I had arrived, but my location wasn't something I could determine. I believe this realm was called the Colored Rooms, perhaps named after the aurora-like lights that constantly flowed overhead. It was rather pretty, something I would expect of Meridia. It was almost like floating islands in the void, yet there didn't seem to be any set direction that I could point and call up. There was land upside down above me, but the plants and such acted as if the gravity there was normal for their orientation. Truly a strange place. Land began to form in front of me as I approached the end of the little landmass I was on, urging me in a specific direction. I don't know how long I walked, or if I was even going anywhere. I think Meridia already knew I was here. In fact, I would put money on it, and she was mad at me. Meridia, I said with a sigh. That seemed to be all it took as the scenery around me shifted, and I was then standing before a large throne with her staring down at me, displeasure written all over her face. I'm sorry. She didn't answer, and I continued. But I also can't guarantee that I won't get in more fights like that. I had no doubt she knew what happened, probably watched it through whatever means she employed. Your apologies need work. She snorted, crossing her arms. I won't ever lie to you and say something like this won't happen again. I took a step forward. She turned her nose up, but my steps weren't impeded. Stupid man. She hissed, standing up. You stupid, stupid man. She took large strides forward, getting right close to me and hitting my shoulder. Do you have any idea how much I worried, watching you fight one of Akatosh's children? I wrapped my hands around her, even as she continued to pound her fists into me. A goddess in strength, but they were light as a feather. I'm sorry. I just continued to whisper. I couldn't intervene. She spat out. There were others watching, that dragonborn being shown for the first time. That damn prophecy that may be the end of Nirn has everyone looking at what will happen. She calmed her anger and looked me straight in the eyes, poking me in the chest. And then there's what you did? So even you were troubled by that. I winced, only realizing recently the repercussion of using Drake's balance breaker. I could understand her stance. Drake used to fight gods, and win. He was one of the strongest things in the world he originated. That kind of power draws attention, even if I only used a fraction of it. Of course, she shouted. Do you think I was the only one as well? A being suddenly awoke, shouting its name to the heavens, and the world shook. She quieted down, looking at me intently. You are keeping a great many secrets. I am, I answered without hesitation as I grabbed her hands in mine. She just snorted, accepting my gesture. Would you tell me if I asked? I would, I replied without hesitation. I want to know, but I want you to tell me of your own volition. She said quietly, Stay in my realm, you will be safe here. My gaze softened as I saw her worry. I can't. Stupid. She spat out, pulling away. What will you do then? I fear that it isn't only just the other Deidre that will seek you out. Perhaps even the divines will also make an appearance. I was going to disappear for a bit, seek out my grandfather for training. I didn't hide my plans from her. And you would be safe there, undiscovered by those that wield the same power as I. She raised an eyebrow, allowing her presence full flow out. I steadied myself as I basked in her full presence. I'll be fine. I cupped her cheek, bring my face up to hers. I can guarantee they won't be able to reach me. Fine. She turned her head away. I will trust you on this, and I will be most upset if you betray this trust of mine. How long will you be away? No more than a month. I was certain that I could return before that much time passed in this world. And I promised to tell you everything when I get back. Never before had I ever had to contemplate the passing of such a small figure of time. I have lived longer than this world, and yet, suddenly something as insignificant as days brings me heartache. Her words were quiet, only spoken for me to hear. It was rare for her to be so open about her affections like this. I didn't know what to respond with, what words to answer her affection. I could do the only thing I knew how. I gently pushed my lips against hers to convey my feeling physically. She reciprocated, wrapping her hands around my neck as I held her waist. I will miss you every moment, I whispered as our lips parted. She was unwilling. I could tell by the look in her eyes, and I knew the feeling all too well. Go, leave my realm, she finally said, putting distance between us. Do not return until you have succeeded in your objective and you intend to stay with me for an extended period of time. I could only smile sadly as I slashed open another portal. I had long prepared the required calculations to fix the issues I had when I first came to this world. No fanfare, no huge mess this time, a simple portal, and I would be back home. I will miss you as well, my dear, she said ever so quietly, like a whisper, the small breeze almost obscuring her voice. I looked back in surprise only for her to use her power and push me through my portal. Chapter 32. I'm home, I muttered, staring up at the sky, recognizing the familiar constellations and the singular moon in orbit. As beautiful as the two Skyrim moons were, I much preferred my own. Now, where exactly was I? My sword was already filling up with the required calculations. The ones I used previously were more so just to get myself to this world line. Well, I just need to make one more jump, and it's not even across realities. As my sword finished up, I slashed the air again and walked through a new portal, turning up in a familiar area, the architecture a mix of modern and Victorian. There were many people, some who gave me looks of surprise or intrigue, but I ignored it. If they were normal people, there might have been an issue, but the number of bounded fields surrounding us was a clear indication that I was in the correct place. The clock tower. I didn't particularly plan on keeping a low profile. The area that composed of this branch of the Mages Association was massive. There were hundreds of buildings, thousands of acres of property, and all manner of privately owned enterprises all in the surrounding area. It wouldn't be incorrect to say it was almost like a college town, but all owned by mages. At its core, the clock tower was essentially a college, albeit one where they teach magecraft, and you can die if you walk down the wrong hallway. So this is it. Drake spoke. I can feel it from here. Oh, I had forgotten. The clock tower was built upon the spirit tomb of Albion, a dragon the size of a small mountain. It was obvious what he was speaking about. It must have been odd to know his rival was dead below the ground they walked. All the gods are gone, creatures retreating to another aspect of the world, and the only remnants of our legacy are our pieces being used by humans. Drake had a strange tone in his voice. I sensed no anger, only resignation. I suppose that is the way of the world. I let him quietly contemplate as I walked. I wasn't in any hurry. I may as well go for a nostalgic walk through the area. But something caught my attention, a small commotion in an open building to the north. If I had to put a word to it, I guess it would be a gymnasium. It was a bit too exquisite, though. The tiles on the floor looked extraordinarily expensive, yet people were breaking them apart like they were nothing. I mean, they can be repaired easily enough through magical means, but it just seems so unnecessary. I walked past a few at the doors to get a better look. Gorilla! Good, Miss Gorilla! A blonde woman with impressive ring curls was wearing a leotard, and she stared with a rather familiar face. Damn you, bitch! Her opponent, a Japanese woman, shouted back as they traded blows. That should be Rin Tosaka. I guess I'm not far off from where I wanted to enter the timeline. I could have sworn I recognized the blonde, Livia or something. Kind of lucky running into her here. You know, now that I think about it, I've had quite a few lucky encounters. Maybe I inherited that luck from a certain side of my family? Oi, look over to the right. I blinked, hearing Dre's words, and my eyes landed on another face I didn't think I would see here. She was also blonde, perhaps a bit short as well. She had her hair up in a bun and wore a white blouse and a blue skirt. She was quite pretty. Yeah, no wonder Drake pointed her out. She give off a familiar presence to you? I whispered to myself. Yeah, I didn't realize it until we got closer. It's to be expected. She carries your core after all. Almost as if she could hear me, she turned to look at me in confusion. Maybe she sensed Drake as well? I could theorize that her dragon's core was having some kind of reaction to the owner and my soul, even if they were technically different dragons. Well, now I'm a bit curious, so I walked over. May I sit here? I asked, very politely. She was royalty and I did have manners. There were bleachers set up, seemingly out of place when this building looked so extravagant, but I didn't dwell on it. What caught my attention was how almost everyone was avoiding her. She was sitting quietly in the corner here, and the few dozen people were no less than probably 20 feet away. I do not own these seats, she replied curtly. I sat down, not too close, but enough to make it obvious that I was in her presence. We sat in silence for a moment or two, watching the fight, but I could see her glance at me a couple times. It's a shame that Miss Tosaka is going to lose, I said idly. My new companion froze, but she didn't look upset. I could guess that she realized the outcome of this little spat as well. How can you tell? She asked, not as an accusation against me, but more in a curious way. Her martial arts aren't bad, but Jequin, if I'm not mistaken. I nodded to myself, reaffirming some of the vague memories I had in my head. She was prominent. How many versions of my previous self had had Tosaka as their student? Maybe I would even call her good, but it's unfortunate that her opponent had mastered reinforcement to a higher degree. Magecraft isn't always the definitive indicator in combat. She furrowed her brow slightly before getting her expression neutral. That is true, especially in this case. If all was equal, I would say that Miss Tosaka would win 9 out of 10 times. Her style of martial arts is a good counter to her opponent who focuses on grabs, throws, and locks and wide movements. While Miss Tosaka seems to favor such large attacks herself, she also was keen enough to mix in some subtle jabs and smaller movements to grab the momentum. My composed companion smiled ever so slightly. If it's as you say, then shouldn't Tosaka win this bout? It comes back down to reinforcement. Her opponent is on a higher level of mastery with that little spell, meaning her reaction speed is slightly higher, her body is sturdier, and her attacks hit just a little bit harder. I shared her small smile. You should know better than most how much that little advantage can mean in a fight. She pursed her lips. I think she was mulling over what I meant by that. I doubt with her nature, she would have revealed her true identity, especially in this place. It is as you say. I do not believe Tosaka can win this fight. She sighed. What are they even fighting about? I asked. I believe Miss Edelfelt is still unhappy that Tosaka had become the Wizard Marshal's student when she had not. Ah, that's her name. Livia Gelita Edelfelt, member of the Edelfelt family. That means she's been here for a bit at least. She's probably around my age. Ah, some scheme to maybe draw the Wizard Marshal's attention? Or is Miss Edelfelt just venting her frustration? Mayhaps it is both. Her lips quirked upward slightly. I do not partake in the politics that happen here, so I would not be able to comment on it anymore. Not partaking in the politics, yet you are so easily able to navigate them. Years of practice don't just disappear, it seems. Of course, I can only guess that the last thing you would want to do as a servant would be to delve back into politics again. I smirked, eyeing her reaction. It was small, but I could tell she was surprised at what I said. Not many magi here are able to identify me as a servant on the first meeting. She said evenly. Or maybe you sought me out specifically. Her attention was more focused than before. Oh, it seems she maybe has a sort of reputation here. Perhaps that is why people were avoiding her. I guess if Rin was my grandfather's student, she would garner enough attention that having a servant around her would become something of common knowledge. It was by chance. I waved off her questioning. I was on the way to see my grandfather, and I just so happened to catch this little spat going on. When I saw Miss Tosaka participating, I thought it's suitable to watch. And what is your intention with Rin? She gazed sharp and considerably, and her words like a sword at my neck. I wouldn't be surprised if she had to dissuade quite a few people here in the past. As far as a magus goes, Rin's talent was indeed monstrous. Add on her lack of family backing, and being Zelretch's student, she's probably been hounded by all types in this place. I was curious about the student my grandfather took in. I said simply, a smile creeping on my face as realization dawned on her. Ah, I believe I forgot to introduce myself. How rude of me. I of course followed proper etiquette for someone of her status. Wilhelm Henry Schweinorg, it is a pleasure to meet you, Miss Pendragon. Chapter 33. How? The servant's eyes flashed in surprise. You're a smart girl, figure it out. I winked, leaving her dumbfounded. And don't worry, I made sure no one was eavesdropping. A rune appeared at the tip of my index finger. It seemed pretty obvious that her true name be kept a secret. She visibly calmed down. She wasn't one to show all her emotions on her sleeve. You are the Wizard Marshal's grandson, or so you claim. I could only suspect that you have access to his magic as well, perhaps knowledge from a parallel world. Well done. I gave her a small clap, withdrawing an item from my ring. Here's your prize. I presented her with a flower, one I was a bit familiar with after learning it was Meridia's favorite. She hesitantly took it, staring at the flower oddly. This is not a normal flower. Artoria was indeed perceptive. It's called dragon's tongue. It grows in places with a lot of heat. It got its name because of its likelihood to bloom in dragons' nests for obvious reasons. There is also the added benefit of being soothing for dragons when they sleep. I was kind of curious to see if it would have the same effect on her as it did on me. Technically a magic flower, but it didn't have any impressive overt effects, mainly used as alchemy ingredients. She actually seemed to like it. I had just assumed to see her merely acknowledge the gift and nothing more, but she looked genuinely interested. I wonder if having Drag in my made her more inclined to have a good impression of me? I was a little surprised when she schooled her expression, pushing back towards me. I thank you for your generous gift, but I will have to decline if you... Her words sounded extremely rehearsed, and I realized what was going on. Stop! I held my hand up, interrupting, realizing what was going on. This is a small gift without any thought of recourse or attempt at garnering some kind of debt. While the mages here weren't exactly on par with the Fae folk, it was a good idea to follow the same principles when dealing with unknowns. I'm sure Artoria memorized the lines regarding accepting gifts, and she resorted right to those. Rin is my grandfather's student, practically family. Consider this a hand extended in friendship. It was just a small thing, not even a romantic gesture. Not that I didn't find her attractive, but such things aren't meant for a first meeting. No, it was genuinely supposed to be just a way to perhaps bridge the gap and maybe become something close to friendly, since we would probably be around each other more often. I wasn't lying about the effects of dragon's tongue either. It was soothing for the dragon species to sleep around. With Artoria's nature, having the magical core of this world's drag, it would probably be just as effective. I'm sure she could even feel its effects right now. Hell, I could feel the subtle, soothing feeling from it, and I wanted to make a good impression. Not like it was something nefarious either, and it was quite pretty if I did say so myself. I see. She still looked a bit unsure. I could only sigh. I couldn't really blame her. This place was a nest of vipers. Most here were willing to do anything to get ahead. Saber! A familiar voice called out, walking towards us. Both me and Artoria turned to look at Rin, who had already changed back into her normal clothes and walked over. It seems we were a bit distracted. She was sporting a few bruises around her face, but nothing too bad. Who are you? Her eyes narrowed as she stood in front of me. Her tone was even, not too disrespectful, but definitely suspicious. Wilhelm Henry Schweinorg, I am your teacher's grandson. I stood up and introduced myself proper. There was no need to be pompous or difficult. I wasn't lying with my comment about us practically being family. I have it on good authority that Zelretch considers her a granddaughter. She just blinked, looking between me and Artoria, who gave a small nod. He never told me he had a grandson. I didn't think he had any relatives. She looked at me intently, as if trying to grasp any deceit. Trying to accuse me of being a liar without insulting me. She's learned well so far. I'm sure there are many things he hasn't told you yet. He has lived a long life after all. She looked skeptical, but it was also one of those circumstances where she couldn't really call me out on it. Reen, another voice shouted, walking over. Livia strode over, flanked by several guards, who looked like they belonged to her family. They all had some ridiculous hairstyles, and basically walking with that aristocrat stride, like they knew they were important and everyone should know it too. What do you want? Rin all but growled. Don't be like that, Reen. Livia laughed haughtily. It was just a friendly spar. I'm sure you'll do better next time. She covered her mouth and continued to laugh in that obnoxious way. Was she pronouncing Rin's name like that on purpose? Rin audibly twitched, and I wanted to sit down and watch the fun, but Artoria put a hand on Rin's shoulder to visibly calm her down. Whatever, I need to get back to work. She flipped her hair up, dismissing the insult. Livia didn't look happy, probably wanted to go to reaction out of Rin. Her eyes turned to me as her lips curled up. Reen, who's your new friend? He's Wilhelm, first-generation Magus. I answered, earning a look from Rin. We exchanged a glance before I answered again. Me and Rin just so happened to share a circle for magical research and would be seeing much more of each other in the future, so I wanted to introduce myself. C looked at me strangely, perhaps because of my first-generation Magus remark. Livia's eyes practically sparkled. Oh ho ho, Reen, I thought you had standards, but I suppose that is another aspect you're lacking in. Livia gave the very definition of a haughty laugh. Oh yes, here comes the hazing. If it wasn't the subtle racism directed to those with Asian descent, everyone loved to look down on the new blood. Technically, I was a first-generation Magus, but on the other hand, my bloodline could be traced back to before humanity. On my father's side, of course, hell, I'm technically related to Big G himself. Rin narrowed her eyes slightly, staring for a moment before she smiled brightly, holding back a laugh. It's actually my first time coming to the clock tower, I said enthusiastically. My acting skills were top-notch, and now that I'm back in my home, I should really check out the local theater scene. It would be a good break from what I've been doing recently. I see, and what, may I ask, is your magecraft focus? Livia could barely hold back the glee in her voice as she kept glancing at Rin. It wasn't exactly a secret what one specializes in, though digging any more than that could be seen as rude or even downright malicious. Well, If she wanted to keep making her hole deeper, who was I to stop her? Well, I quite enjoy runecraft. I smiled brightly. Ho ho ho! She covered her mouth, laughing some more. Runecraft is it? What an old craft to pursue. Yeah, the older families here look down on runecraft due to its inability to perceivably reach the root. The Akashic Records, commonly referred to as the root, is the origin of all existence, containing all knowledge past, present, and future. It is the focus of every true magus and the purpose of their research. I just nodded along, completely ignorant of her subtle jabs. Indeed, runes are a craft that dates back to the age of gods. They are a truly powerful avenue of research. Yes, yes, of course. She continued to snicker, stealing glances at Rin, who just scowled and crossed her arms. Though I saw a small glint in Artoria's eye, I think she noticed what I was doing and didn't make a move to stop me. I guess even she was a bit put off by this girl's attitude, yet she had too much pride to step past her own position to do something. It's always nice to meet someone who appreciates my craft. I smiled happily, trying to mimic Thorum's own smile. I'm really impressed with the facilities here. They even allow for such vigorous sparring between colleagues. Livia's eyes seemed to brighten. You're right, they do allow for sparring between colleagues. Since you're new to the clock tower, why don't you introduce yourself with a spar? Alistair here does so love a friendly bout. She tapped the large gentleman, standing next to her, on the arm. He was a little bit bigger than most Nords, practically all muscle. It was impressive, really. Well, it's my first day here, I don't know. You are Reen's friend. I'm sure you know your way around a fight. She snickered. There was a crowd gathering around us at this point. A bunch of whispers directed at me, and some not-so-subtle laughs echoing Livia's. Well, it looks like she took the bait. Okay, you convinced me. Let's have a friendly fight. I held out my hand and smiled towards Alistair. He stared down at me, not saying a word. It was rather intense. I don't think he's allowed to speak, unless Livia gives him permission. Such is the way some of these families raise their extra members. Alistair, dear, why don't you repair the arena while I give our new friend a rundown of the rules? Livia said ever so kindly. Do whatever you want. Rin snorted. Reen, don't be like that. How about we make a friendly wager? I have a few recently cut gems. She took a couple of shiny gems out of her sleeve, practically waving them around. They appeared to have not been used yet, meaning that her family's magic hasn't touched them, so they were safe for outsiders to acquire. Unless, of course, you don't have any more yourself. But how could that be? I'm sure someone of your stature has many resources available. I could tell Rin was about to lose her temper. She did a good job of keeping a straight face so far. Actually, I forgot to give a present for our first meeting. How rude of me. I withdrew a bag from my ring and presented it to Rin. To be honest, I did want to give her a gift for our first meeting since she was grandfather's student. I just didn't plan on doing it so openly. Rin hesitantly opened the bag. I could tell she cast her own diagnostic spell on the fabric before opening. Good girl. Make sure no one tries to pull a fast one on you. This! She exclaimed, looking down in shock. Artoria even peeked over, and her eyes widened ever so slightly. I heard you specialize in jewelcraft. I believe these may help you in your research. Rin lifted a handful of jewels out of the bag. I think she completely forgot where she was, as even Livia looked completely shocked, staring at the bag, then at me, and even down at my ring. I guess she noticed where I took the bag from. Too late, you dug your hole, time to get buried. I don't hate Livia, merely more of a dislike, which is why I wasn't plotting her death, or anything like that. I would settle for a small bit of humiliation. I knew she wasn't a bad person, but she also wasn't the picture of innocence either. Why don't we increase our wager a little bit? Rin's lips formed a malicious smirk. Of course, I would completely understand if you couldn't match up to my wealth. She flipped her hair haughtily, mimicking Livia's mannerisms. Livia practically snarled in frustration. Humph, I don't keep that many gems on me like some kind of peasant trying to show off their wealth. She scoffed. I can match any wager you put forth. Rin very reluctantly handed the bag over to Saber. Saber, you keep hold of this until the fight is over. Of course. I shall make sure all dues are paid out. She nodded. It is good to know at least one of you is up to a certain standard. Livia turned her nose up, handing over the few gems she currently had. Miss Saber, why don't you become my servant? You're wasted on such a gorilla like Reen. I told you before. She's my servant. Rin practically shouted in annoyance. Ho ho ho, you see the Saber, your master is such a barbarian, not that I could expect much else from an Asian. You want to go blondie? I wouldn't mind a second fight today. The first one left me unfulfilled. Rah! Gorilla, keeping roaring, Miss Gorilla. Rin. No. Stay out of it, Saber. This bitch has it coming. Ahem. I cleared my throat, earning their attention, and a small nod of thanks from Saber. Of course. Only someone uncouth would interrupt a fight that is already predetermined. Livia waved her hand flippantly towards Rin. Just get your gems ready, bitch. Rin snorted. How uncivilized. Livia scoffed. Now, I believe it is time to explain the rules of this battle. She turned to look at me. The rules are simple, no killing. She clapped her hands happily. And that is it. Yeah, they don't really babysit people here, but they also don't like to do the dirty deeds out in public like this. They at least want their students to not kill each other so openly. I believe my opponent is ready for me. I saw Alistair waiting patiently at one end of the arena, the entire thing looking brand new as all the tiles were now fixed and in place, and there wasn't a speck of dust to be seen. Well, time to establish the pecking order. Chapter 34. There was actually more to the fight than just don't kill your opponent. No doubt Livia was trying to be dramatic. Really, it was just basic etiquette things, like don't purposely blow up the building, don't hurt spectators, blah blah, common sense things. This will be an open match. Any spells are acceptable as long as the rules are followed. Livia stated, facing the crowd, hyping it up. She was really trying to embarrass Rin here. Honestly, this just went past amusing and fell flatly on annoying. I'm sure in her mind, this Alistair would defeat me, then she would gloat and blow it up saying how Rin's friend was so easily defeated. Basically, just twisting in the knife after she won their earlier spar. Honestly, this is pretty tame for plots go in this place. Can we just get on with this? I need to get back to my workshop. Rin replied with detachment, much to Livia's annoyance. I smiled slightly, realizing that Rin also knew exactly what buttons to push on Livia. Let's see how long you can stay so relaxed. Livia frowned, turning back to the arena. Let me introduce our fighters. On the left we have Alistair Edelfelt, third son of the Second Branch family. Even with being the third child of the Second Branch family with no crest of his own, he was able to pioneer a new path for his own thaumaturgy, only using the basics of our family specialty. Oh, his own path. Maybe that's why he was elevated to the position of Livia's bodyguard. She's the most talented of her family, or did she have a sister? I vaguely recall that she was someone extremely important to their family line, basically one of or the next in line to lead. That's probably why she had several bodyguards following her around. A branch family member, and not even the first child, no doubt he received very few resources and had to rely purely on his own skills and talent. My interest was piqued now, a new path. I'm curious what he's used their jewel craft as a foundation to achieve. The barest of basics was known about jewel craft across the magical community. The non-science would probably have a little bit more than that to work with. And how about a welcome to a new member of our prestigious institute, coming from the East, a first-generation magus, and a runecraft practitioner, Wilhelm. She exclaimed, intentionally iterating my background. Well, wasn't that the unholy fucking trifecta of nonsense that the people here look down on? I could hear the laughs and jeers directed toward me and feigned ignorance, but I definitely remembered faces. I looked around and caught Artoria's eyes. I raised an eyebrow as she looked back at me, only receiving a small nod, but I could pretty much understand her message. It seems like I have her blessing, and I do want to leave a good impression. Bounded fields sprang up around us, a defense mechanism that allowed the fighting to not carry over to any bystander. Not something absolute, but it was the bare necessary for a type of facility like this. Well, the facilities here were something to admire. While not all that impressive on the surface, the ease of use and application was noteworthy. Begin! Livia shouted as all the mechanisms fell into place. Well, bonus points to my opponent. He didn't act cocky and immediately acted. Reinforcement covered his body and I mimicked the action. But instead of charging right at me, he dashed to the side and threw a handful of gems into the center of the area. No, that wasn't quite right. They weren't quite gemstones, they were pieces. Like a few were shattered into dozens of smaller ones. Topazes, if my eyes didn't fail me. They sunk into the ground as their mysteries actualized, ignoring the tiles and other barriers to their target. It only took a moment for something to rise up. Golems, now that's a surprise. I said honestly. And they even looked above average, curious. I know it takes a bit of effort to make golems of his quality, and you did so instantly. Alistair came from my side. Every step he took practically dug into the ground as he charged with an overhead fist. I ducked, knocking his fist away, and used his own momentum to throw him towards the wall. Surprisingly, he was able to fold into my own attack and reorganized his fall to catch himself from suffering any damage. I suppose it has been a while since I've fought someone in hand-to-hand that could move at these kinds of speeds. Perhaps I'm rusty? I felt a small smile form on my face as he moved back and ducking close to the ground and trying to sweep my legs by swinging both arms. With a stomp on the ground, I cast an earth wall right in front of me as his arms smashed it to pieces. With a wave of my hand, several runes appeared, floating in air in front of me. As the wall crumbled, they actualized, forming into flames and firing off like bullets towards my opponent, who nimbly dodged each one. Once again, I'm impressed. He shouldn't be any more than 1 or 2 years ahead of me, yet he has a good amount of experience and spellcraft under his belt. This time he chose to duck behind the pillars holding the ceiling up. Hats off to my opponent. His golems didn't allow me breathing room as they also moved to surround and attack. He also didn't re-engage, opting to allow his disposable minions to wear me down and gauge my reaction. Say what you will about the Edelfelt, but they sure train theirs well. Harass, immobilize, swarm. I could tell his strategy, and it was both well made and a solid plan. Curious thing you are, I said idly as a massive stone fist swept down at me. These things lumbered 1 or 2 heads over me, but they were a bit impressive on their feet. Their coordination wasn't bad either. Were they perhaps mental commands from their caster, or pre-programmed already? They weren't stumbling over one another as they all closed in on me. Well, this would be uncomfortable if I allowed this to happen. I allowed runes to swirl around my hand, forming into a dozen runic circles covering every side. Lightning, I lazily called out as the large bolts discharged towards the closest ones, demolishing them with a frightening ease. There were shouts of astonishment from the peanut gallery. I held back a smirk as I noticed Livia's surprise. Now aren't you a gift that keeps on giving? I couldn't help but grin as I saw the bodies reform without any inherent damage to the golems. I love to see new spells, especially ones like this that were very ingenious in their applications, but I think all good things must come to an end. I believe I understand now, I stated, weaving through the mass of stone limbs swung at me. Distort, a simple illusion spell I learned from Skyrim. The numbers of me in the arena now number in the 20s as I confused the animated earth constructs. This spell was quickly turning into one of my favorites. Topazes, I said decently loud, making sure to gather attention on me. Jewelcraft and the Kabbalah. You use the connection topazes have to Yeset of the Spherote, a common enough application but quite intelligent. Specifically, you pull on the Tree of Life to grant the golems life at the obvious cost of the magical energy supplied via the topazes. This also has the added benefit of not allowing them to die, while the topazes still supply them with magical energy, but at the same time they're time-limited, but in a trade-off their abilities are almost supercharged for the duration. This concept is mostly used in healing, but you are using it to sustain life via magical battery, and thus they are essentially immortal until either the gem is removed or the magical energy runs out. My praise wasn't unwarranted. This guy was truly talented. Well, since he showed me something so nice, I won't be too harsh. I think a week or so bedridden is enough of a punishment. I materialized the runes around me, moving my hands fast enough to string the sentences together. I intentionally chose something rather showy. I made a few calculations and first summoned a large runic circle under my feet to help facilitate casting and control the output to a more precise degree. Freezing winds of Jotunheim. I let my voice carry all across the arena. The cold air exploded out from me, instantly freezing everything in the vicinity. It even crashed against the bounded fields in the area, cascading and threatening to break free from the confines. I made sure to reel back all the excess, but this was a spell that didn't want to be caged. The golems froze solid, unable to move, and I assume I burned through their magical energy supply, as they didn't even fight it after a bit. The cold continued, and the bounded field began to crack as the wind swept across the entire building. I reined it in as they rushed out, but I only allowed everyone here to get a little cold, forcing the spell to dissipate a few moments later. The place was freezing, and there was a deathly quiet in the air now. Every step I took on the newfound frost practically echoed throughout the arena as I approached the lump of ice that was my opponent. A small tap and it shattered, Alistair falling to the ground on his back, his breathing a little haggard, but he still tried to jump up. I merely slammed my foot on his stomach, causing him to slightly cough blood. "You lost." I narrowed my eyes down at him, daring him to say otherwise. He just responded with a meek nod. I let off him, taking a step back and sweeping my gaze across the crowd. I met the eyes of anyone who dared to look back. By all means, insult me based on my craft or heritage, I welcome it. But it seemed like no one was keen on speaking. "Well, Alistair should be fine if you want to go retrieve him." I walked over to Livia with a smirk on my face. I didn't want the guy to die. He hasn't even said a word to me, merely following the directions of his family head or whatever. And he was quite talented. It would be a shame if he died like this. How? Livia looked utterly dumbfounded. How unthoughtful, I seemed to have forgotten to full introduce myself again. I gave an exaggerated bow. Wilhelm Henry Schweinorg. Gods, I love saying that. Schweinorg. She stuttered as her face paled. And there it is. The peanut gallery also was having a conniption. I think I saw a few that were throwing around insults, previously bolt out of the area. Good luck with that. I can be a right petty bastard sometimes. Pray you don't meet me again. How was that? Pretty good, right? I looked towards Rin and Artoria, the latter of whom just nodded like she expected it. Yeah, she probably saw through me already, but Rin seemed a bit surprised at my power. But I think she just pushed all that away as an evil smile grew on her face, and she turned towards Livia. Her face! It was priceless! Rin laughed heartily as we walked down the halls. And then you were like, "Excuse me, I wouldn't want my Asian barbarianism to contaminate you any longer," when she tried to apologize after hearing your name. Yes, she was getting on my nerves. I just nodded. I wasn't going to hold Rin's hand all the time and try to meddle with her issues, but some lines needed to be drawn. She should keep her head down for a while now. All teased I won't have to hear that bitch's laugh until her family is done punishing her. Rin happily jiggled the bag full of jewels. And she has to pay me even more gems. I wish I could see the look on her face when she has to go to her family and beg. Well, I'm glad you like my present. I just smiled, recalling a few memories of this girl from my last life. It was amusing how she never even considered declining the gift I gave her. Are you really Zelretch's grandson? You said you were a first generation. She looked at me as we turned a corner. We have no blood connection, if that's what you're wondering. I said honestly. But yes, we are related, and the best way I chose to address it was being his grandson. It makes it simpler for all involved. She just signed. You have that same, "I know more than you" look that the old man does. Really? I need to check that out in the mirror and learn how to do it intentionally. I wonder if he's home, I said quietly as we approached his room. It was more like an underground mansion. The place was hard to describe. A lot of the infrastructure was actually underground as it got closer to the tomb with a better atmosphere for experiments. Let's see if I remember how to do this. I began tapping the door in various places. There was no handle. It was magically locked in a very intricate way, but it seemed like it was the same as I recalled. There we are, I said as the doors disengaged and all the traps and defense turned off. I guess you really do know him then. Rin finally acknowledged. I don't think anyone would be brave enough or stupid enough to actually try to break into here. You'd be surprised, I said with a small chuckle. He didn't get that mask of a prankster without good reason. In fact, it all started with some idiot breaking into my workshop and stealing an old prototype for his jeweled sword. You throw one guy into a dimension filled with some very affectionate tentacle monsters, and suddenly you're a prankster. Wonderful, he isn't here yet. Why is that wonderful? Rin looked at me in confusion, and Artoria followed us inside. She seemed relaxed enough. I guess they've both been here long enough to not tiptoe around everything. But she also seemed rather relaxed in my presence, not nearly as on guard as I would have imagined. This was technically Zelretch's workshop, but really only one room was dedicated to that. Another was for Rin's own workshop and various other living spaces. Hell, there was a room that was specifically Zelretch's office, the target of my attention. Because I can now raid his liquor cabinets. Will you now? A voice grabbed all our attention, and I felt a chill run up my spine as my eyes widened. The family face that I saw 1,000 times when I peered into the mirror of my memories, the same eyes, the same look. I didn't even fucking sense him. I didn't feel any speck of his presence as he used the kaleidoscope to appear here. Master, Rin said respectfully. Rin, I hear you got into a fight today. He smiled ever so gently, but dear God did it give me anxiety for some reason. It was like an invisible pressure weighing down on me. He's strong, Drake spoke up. Your memories don't really do it justice. Yeah, I was really a monster in my previous life. It was nothing, just a stupid spar. Rin huffed in annoyance and Zelretch just chuckled, turning towards Artoria. What a beautiful flower. He flipped his hand, revealing an elegant vase with some water already inside it. It would make a lovely decoration. Thank you, Wizard Marshal, Artoria said respectfully. And my grandson. His eyes bore down on me. I felt so insignificant for the briefest of moments before he pulled back. I was moments away from doing something to diminish the pressure myself. I see. He stroked his chin. I assume we have quite a bit to discuss. Chapter 35. We sat in his office. The familiar walls and furniture were playing heavily on my nostalgia. Rin and Artoria sat next to me, all three of us facing Zelretch, who sat behind his desk as he casually browsed a few documents, seemingly content with the silence in the room. Which one is it? Zelretch spoke softly, barely even glancing up, but I felt the question directed towards me. Pardon? I asked in confusion. Which of my collection were you so keen on helping yourself to? I see. The 300-year-old whiskey. There wasn't really a point in hiding it. That is a good choice. He nodded. I'm curious, how does it rate? Easily a 9 out of 10, one of my favorites. Zelretch slowly got up from his seat and walked over to the cabinet, holding his various alcohol. I was saving this for a special occasion, and I believe this qualifies. There was no rush to his movements as he carefully looked over the selected bottle. He took 4 identical glasses and set them up each in front of us. How would you suggest taking it? He inspected the bottle and the liquid within. It's not bad clean, but I prefer it with a couple drops of water. I thought for a moment before mentally checking my ring. I have some glacial water, never touched by pollution or human hands. I offered, taking out a bottle I filled back in Skyrim. It was just a whim back then. I had some free time, and such pure water was a bit hard to come by without decent effort to produce. Wonderful! He took the container and admired it for a moment before pouring everyone a smidge into their glasses. It's an acquired taste. Don't force yourself if you don't like it. I said lazily towards Rin and Artoria. I admit, I have not tried any alcohol from this time period besides some of the more readily available stock. Artoria lightly picked up her glass, giving it a curiously sniff. She probably only had anything cheap so far, probably sake considering where she was summoned to, and Rin didn't strike me as someone who would be a connoisseur of the harder varieties of liquor. This is supposed to be 300 years old. Rin looked at her glass. There doesn't exist a whiskey over 200 years old, I said with a small smile. At least, one known to the public. From a parallel world line, then? Rin hazarded a guess. Actually, it's native here, Zelretch corrected, taking a sip, leaning back and appreciating the taste. Your recommendation was spot on. His eyes glanced to me, but for a moment. Then how is it 300 years old? Her eyebrows furrowed, hesitantly taking her own sip. I saw her struggle to keep it down, and I didn't want to laugh. I wouldn't make fun of her for that. Some people simply don't like the taste. When Miss Aozaki joined the clock tower, I approached her for a joint experiment. I had some thoughts that needed confirming, and the application of her own magic would be invaluable. Zelretch quietly explained. You may know her better as the Blue, but being as one of the few prominent figures of Asian descent, I don't doubt you've heard her name a few times. The Blue, the fifth true magic, the name for the other magician, just as Zelretch, is called the Kaleidoscope. Truthfully, I don't know much about the Blue, but I do know that time travel lies in its domain. What? So you sent some alcohol back in time? she muttered, looking a bit put off by the taste. Zelretch let out a small chuckle. Indeed, though the objects we sent back were irrelevant, but that didn't mean we couldn't benefit from the procedure as well. I believe Miss Aozaki also still has her own bottle she hasn't opened yet. I will need to make a note and give her my recommendation. Wait, if this was the first time you opened it, how did he know what it tastes like? Rin pointed her finger towards me. Oh, she picked up on that. I thought for sure she wouldn't notice. I praised with a smile. Zelretch also smiled. I had chosen her as my student for a reason. Time travel? Artoria asked, tilting her head. A good guess, and while technically correct, is wrong. I replied, I'm not native to this world line, and I was born about a decade from now, you're wise. I have some investment knowledge if you're interested. I said with a laugh, that may come in handy. Zelretch shared my amusement. I noticed your runecraft application. I'm surprised you chose that path. It was something I could immediately achieve something of note with, and my resources at the time were lacking. I frowned, thinking back to the world I was born in. I felt a bit of regret that I had so quickly abandoned it. Though I do not regret my decision, I have found myself content with the craft so far. The runic arts are a very practical path to choose. I don't blame you for that decision. Zelretch acknowledged, not looking at all put off by my choice. I've never seen someone utilize runes like that before. Rin furrowed her eyebrows. Mostly just for single enhancements or small spells. Most rune users don't have nearly infinite magical energy like we do. I pointed out, a single rune is akin to a spell that requires a couple words to actualize. I had put forth dozens to hundreds of runes into a single spell. Others can achieve this, but most can't throw them around like I can when I can just refill my reserves so quickly. Rin let out a long-winded sigh. I still haven't gotten that far in my studies. She was talking about the infinite magical energy I was assuming. Technically, it's not infinite magical energy in the way that the heavens feel is used. It could be said that once you master the kaleidoscope to a certain degree, your mana regeneration is basically, yes. Really, it's only limited by our own physical ability to handle. It was the reason magic circuits lost a lot of their relevance. Most mages had to be conscious of their spell usage, but a master of the kaleidoscope can throw around spells all day until their body finally collapses under the strain. I finished off my glass, and Zelretch was kind enough to pour me another glass as I finished my first. I noticed Rin pushing hers away, whereas Artoria didn't seem to prefer the taste either. Here, I said, offering 2 bottles of mead I withdrew from my ring. How do you keep doing that? Rin asked, inspecting the bottle. Taking stuff from nowhere. I smirked. I'm sure your teacher can do something similar. I've been working on the kaleidoscope for months now, and I still have no idea. He won't tell me anything, except to figure it out myself. Rin huffed. This is good. She took a second sip. Mead from the world I came from, found nowhere on Earth. It reminds me of the drinks from my time. Artoria spoke softly, also enjoying the beverage. I'm glad they like them. This is a joyous occasion, so it should be celebrated with drinks at least. I felt a little bit of pity for Rin. She's still in that learning stage. There needs a bit of self-discovery before he could actually start pointing her in specific directions. Otherwise her own potential could be stymied. To answer your question, it's my ring. I wiggled my finger. It is an impressive piece of work. The space is folded seamlessly, if a bit amateurishly as well. Zelretch praised. It was the archmage at a college I joined in another world. It was apparently his first attempt at such a thing. Impressive for a novice then. Well, he was a rather impressive mage, all things considered. I have no idea what you're talking about. Rin frowned in annoyance. A folded special dimension attached to my ring. Essentially, I have a pocket space I can access that stores stuff. I said simply. I even have this too. I took out my hat to show off. May I? Zelretch asked as I gave a nod and handed it over. He inspected the workmanship and even stuck his hand inside the space. What an amusing piece of work. If the ring was amateurish, this is childish at best. Yet someone managed to finagle it together into something that works. He handed it back to me. Thank you for the drink. I finally said it wasn't good to hold back on etiquette even if it was towards myself. How could I hold back with such a sincere gift towards my student? He smiled lightly, conveying his gratitude. Oh, that reminds me. I was going to give something else. I forgot about the other stuff. I didn't really want to hand this over in public. Let's see. I shifted through a few things, taking a couple books out, inspecting them, and setting them on the table. Jewelcraft is a good path, but it also lacks in some areas. Let's see. Lesser Ward would be good for a shield that doesn't need to waste gems on. A basic healing spell is good for every mage's repertoire. I set down a spell tome on healing as well. Oak Flesh, a body-strengthening spell that works on a different paradigm than reinforcement, so they can be used in tandem. I set that on the desk as well. I actually have a couple versions superior to Oak Flesh, but it was a good starting point. Detect Life, good for dangerous situations. Another good spell I grabbed on my way out. Rin looked at me like I had two heads. Zelretch just blinked, taking a book and cracking it open, reading a few words. Interesting. I don't recognize the origin. He looked genuinely happy. I could understand. Finding new and interesting things was always a happy occasion at that point in my life. I may have fudged my first application of dimensional travel and ended up on a world line outside of Gaia. I sheepishly rubbed the back of my head. He closed the book, giving me a deadpanned look. You're lucky you didn't die. Do you have any idea how difficult it is to travel to a world not parallel to our own? What am I saying? Of course you know. Actually, I think there may be some holes in my memories. I don't have any knowledge of going outside of Earth. With some self-reflection, I realized there were quite a few holes in my memories. Zelretch tilted his head, seemingly shifting through several thoughts before thinking about something intently. I see. I suppose that might be expected considering your unique circumstances. Well, it was already pretty clear he had an idea of what was going on. It was to be expected of myself. I guess it's time to have this conversation. I sighed, bracing myself. It was going to come eventually. It was odd to see me. From this side, the presence he gave off was surprisingly gentle. Here you go, Rin. Take good care of these and put them in my library when you finish. Thanks. She was still out of it. It's nothing. I waved her off. I had copies anyways, and they are just the basics. I looked over to my previous self. So, how much do you know? I can make several educated guesses. I wouldn't be remiss to hear it all from the beginning. Yeah, that's what I was assuming at this point. Rin and Artoria looked at me intently. I guess they were lost and were curious as well. I guess it started about a month ago when I awoke memories from my previous life and realized I was reincarnated. Reincarnation. Rin and Artoria shared the same remark, astonishment clear on their faces. Yeah, it was a bit wild for me when I realized what was happening. A lifetime's worth of memories flooding into the mind of a normal 18-year-old kid. I was a bit of a mess those first few days. I just ran a hand through my hair, thinking back to it. How did your memories awaken? Zelretch asked. Do you not know? Didn't you set this up? My eyebrows scrunched up in confusion. I had no memories of this myself, but I attributed it to the holes, but this was in no way by chance. Something like this could not be anything but artificial intervention. To be honest, I haven't done more than just write down some thoughts on what you went through. I haven't even developed a proper hypothesis yet for testing, he admitted without any fanfare. That is not what I wanted to hear. Is it possible a future him, or rather me, did this? While I doubt he would have had events play out like they did, I had assumed he had a more direct hand in my existence. I think we're both missing context then. I guess we'll figure this out together. I sighed. Getting answers to my questions wouldn't be as easy as I thought. It started when an exorcist attacked me after I accidentally walked up on him. An exorcist? Why would an exorcist attack you if you were just a normal person then? Rin blurted out. Oh, did I forget to mention that? My mother is human, my father is not. I shared a look with Zelretch. Apparently, he didn't know what I was either if I was reading his expression correctly. A phantasmal species in the modern era. Artoria looked a bit surprised, but I didn't see any judgmental looks. Interesting. Well, the world I came from, the age of gods never ended, even if the world was pretty similar to this one. It wasn't that simple, but it was enough to describe the situation. Curious. Zelretch scratched his chin and thought. How? The age of gods. Doesn't that mean magic and miracles should be more open and widespread? Should thaumaturgy even exist there, since humanity would be closer to the root, But then how would it be modernized to something resembling this world if that was the case? Were there new layers of reality that overrode pre-existing worldviews into something that allowed for coherence? Did the phantasmal species develop alongside humanity? Would the collective unconscious still favor us? Rin blurted out, "That would explain your non-human blood. Are you an Oni then? A yokai of some sort?" Kind of close, but you are thinking incorrectly. Wow, she really was wrapping her head around this. Those were some good questions. It's sad that the answer is kind of lackluster. "Are you a demigod?" Artoria asked. "Divinity," Rin practically exclaimed, reiterating the question. "Are you a demigod?" Wrong direction." I snorted, holding back a small laugh. "What do you mean, wrong direction?" Rin questioned. "You are thinking me something divine, and you are thinking in the wrong direction. Are you part demon then?" Artoria said plainly. I admired her ability to hold her emotions in check. I don't think most people would look so natural accusing someone of being a demon and actually believing it. Well, not really. I wasn't, but the difference was mostly academic. I watched Artoria furrow her brow, trying to think through it. Rin wasn't faring any better. I waited until she started taking a drink to answer. "My biological father is Satan. I'm a half-devil." PPPPFFFFFFTT. A large amount of liquid squirted across the table, landing on Zelretch's face. There was a pregnant silence. Zelretch just blinked as liquid dropped down his face. Artoria looked utterly dumbfounded as she looked at me, and even Zelretch seemed a bit taken back. I just smiled innocently. It was technically correct, the best kind of correct.